Today I'm going to talk about the Insta360 Go and whether you can use it to vlog.
Going to the bathroom and you're filming, you're weird. You're weird.
Oh, we're not quite heavy enough yet. Okay, ready?
Mommy, can I help you? No, want me to help you?
Okay, ready?
I'll help you. My turn.
Okay, go. Okay, let's just start. Whoa!
See ya. Whoa! But one of the things that I didn't get to test in the last video, just because it was just getting too long, was the stabilization of this camera at regular frame rate, not high frame rates, regular frame rates. And the reason why shooting at regular frame rate is separately important is because for all these action cameras with really high frame rates, they don't have all the stabilization features available when you get to the high frame rates. So at the normal frame rate, I'm getting much more stabilization. Hopefully you're also getting a better sense of the audio quality of what this camera can really do. So that was a couple of days of footage, something a little bit different than what you might normally see on this channel. This is a running YouTube channel where we talk about all things running, including cameras that you can use to capture your footage. And when I made my first Insta360 Go video, one of the things that we had focused on there was how it works as an action camera. And for me, that means how does it work at high frame rates? What's the image quality like? What is the stabilization like at high frame rates? But one of the things I didn't get to talk about as much is the other things that you might want to use a camera that's this size for, and that's for vlogging. And that's something else that we do on this channel a little bit. But before I get too deep into my thoughts on the Insta360 Go, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a camera that was sent to me by Insta360 for the purpose of review, so I didn't pay for this camera, but no one's paying me to make this video or to use the camera at all, and no one's going to get a chance to review this footage or have any editorial control about this video until you guys get to see it not until, before you guys get to see it, no one's going to get a chance to preview anything that you guys are seeing in this video now. So with that out of the way, let's talk about this tiny little camera from Insta360, the Insta360 Go. Now, I think the first thing to kind of keep in mind throughout this whole video is that this is a $200 camera and it's absolutely tiny. And I say that to keep it in perspective, because you're probably comparing it against the GoPro. That's what I'm doing for the action camera that I'm kind of putting it head to head with. That camera weighs twice as much and costs twice as much. So there's going to be some differences there. But I do think that in terms of some of the strengths of this camera, regardless of its cost, is that it does a fantastic job in bright light. Some of the running footage that you saw from my long run over the weekend is from bright lighting conditions outdoors. The camera performs exceptionally well, but I would expect that from pretty much any action camera that's on the market today. Bright light, good lighting conditions outside shouldn't be a challenge for any camera. It also did really great at stabilization though, which is where I thought that this camera was really surprising. On that Saturday long run, I was moving at a relatively quick clip. For me, that was a fast run, a little bit under 7 minutes per mile. And so the fact that the camera can still stay that stabilized at that speed, that's a lot of jostling that's happening. The arms are moving as I'm running, I'm bouncing around as I'm hitting the ground. So the camera's doing really well there. So I was really impressed. Insta360 has really great stabilization in their other cameras. I typically shoot with their Insta360 One X, which is the 360 camera. And I get really great results with the stabilization there. So I was very happy to see that that technology is trickling over to something this small. Now the areas where I felt like this camera struggled a bit was low light. And so that's why I really wanted to bring it when I went to the planetarium with the family over the weekend as well. Because that place is pretty much dark the entire time. Not only is it indoors, which anything that's kind of indoors I would consider low light, but it's also indoors and very dark in certain places. And so I thought I'd put this camera through a little bit of a torture test there in terms of low light performance. And yes, the images were pretty grainy at a lot of points, but at least you could see what was going on in the footage. I did adjust the audio that you heard throughout the intro footage that you saw today. I didn't adjust any of the video aspects of the footage that you saw. I'm not a great color grader. I'm a little bit colorblind, but I can tell when things are kind of need adjustments in terms of brightness and contrast, moving up shadows, midtones, and dark tones. I was tempted to do that with some of this footage. I left it alone so you could see what it looks like straight out of the camera without any tinkering in terms of what those light levels are like. And so I thought that it did okay. The other area that I thought that this camera is kind of weak is in dynamic range. It's something that I think GoPro does really exceptionally well. So I don't think that the camera is necessarily bad. I think the GoPro is really good at dynamic range, and it's also a little bit better at really low light situations. And so that's where I think that this camera is a little bit weaker. And because of those two things, especially in like the vlogging situation where this is really small and has no screen on it, I found it a little bit hard to use this as like a main vlogging camera, even though it is really small and convenient to use. And you don't want to have something huge when you're going somewhere with like your kids and other people's kids are around, because you don't want to be creepy. So there's like the creep factor if you brought like a giant camera on like a huge gimbal around to the planetarium. So something small is good, but I found in those situations a GoPro would have been great as well. Like the extra weight wouldn't have hurt, or even just using the phone where I could at least see what the action is. And cell phone cameras are better than they've ever been. I felt like I probably would have preferred using that to this. So I feel like this, in terms of vlogging for like family stuff, regular stuff where weight isn't a huge issue, this makes a great B cam. So you can put it, because it has that magnetic back and has a ton of different mounts and accessories, you can put it in some interesting spots where you could get different views where a phone wouldn't fit, or even a GoPro might not even fit. So that would be really convenient, or something where you don't want to have to worry about, did I bring one of my 50 different GoPro accessories to mount it in a certain place in like a children's museum or at a planetarium. If it's metal, I could just click it onto something, not an exhibit, but onto like a railing or something like that. Then you could just kind of clip it onto something really quick, get the shot, and then you're out of there. You don't have to disrupt kind of like your interaction with your family, which is a big thing for me in terms of what makes a good vlogging camera. How disruptive is it? This is pretty uninvasive. I could even hold the baby who's getting pretty big these days and still do all the things that I need to do with the camera while also just interacting with the child and also not dropping the child, which is always a plus. So that's kind of how I see it. For action camera stuff, I think you could definitely use it as an action camera. I've been using it inside this quarter 20 mount and putting it at the end of a stick. I've actually been using it kind of in dual lightsaber mode with the Insta360 1X on one end to capture 360 video at high frame rates. And then I would be using this again as like a B camera where I could use it at the lower frame rate, higher stabilization, get the microphone working. When you, on Insta360 cameras, I think that something happens with the microphones when you shoot at high frame rates. It kind of like de-emphasizes the microphone. Maybe I'm just imagining it or what. But if there's ever a time where I just want to talk to the camera, I don't need it to be a high frame rate. So then I just use this at the regular standard frame rate, get the microphone going, get good stabilization so it's not so jittery. If I were using this at the higher frame rate, I wouldn't have as much stabilization. So this is kind of what I've been doing to talk to the camera, and you saw a little bit of that today. And so far I think that kind of works. This is too big for me to carry to a race, not because it's too heavy, but probably because they wouldn't let me in. So I'll get something a little bit smaller, but something that probably still extends a little bit. But this is pretty much what I've been running with lately the past couple of days, ever since I got the Insta360 Go. I've been using it like this, and this has been a pretty good A camera for action footage, but for me, I've been using it primarily as a really great B cam, kind of getting that in the middle of the action narrative, so that way I can talk to the camera while it's really highly stabilized without having to worry that I might accidentally have changed the settings on this camera to something that I wouldn't want for later when I'm trying to capture action footage. If you have any questions about that, please put them in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about it more down there. Before I go, I do want to remind you guys about the charity runner for this week, and it's Jerry Canterbury. He's running the Marine Corps Marathon for 26/1. I was very happy to donate $70 to his fundraising efforts, and I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?